My sister Rose went missing after falling off a cliff, and everyone thought I did it. So, I ended up being tortured by the people who once loved me the most, my parents, the person I loved, and my childhood friends. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore, and attempted to end it all by cutting my wrists. Meanwhile, we got news that Rose was living abroad, married with kids. That's when everyone realized it was all a plot orchestrated by Rose herself. Soon after, they all turned to me, asking for forgiveness. The night Homer dumped me to propose to Rose, I got drunk and muttered something I regretted the most. I said, I wish Rose was never found. The next day, news came in that Rose died after falling off a cliff during a movie shoot. Once again, everyone thought it was me. For the first time, my mom, who loved me the most, slapped me across the face. How could I have such a wicked daughter? She shouted angrily. My dad silently smoked beside her. At first, I tried to explain. I did like Homer, but I never intended to harm Rose. Nobody believed me though. My drunken words became proof of my malicious nature. So when Homer dragged me out, saying I had to repent for Rose, my parents just watched coldly. They let the man I loved for over 20 years push me into hell. When Rose was little, she once went missing because our nanny wasn't attentive. We found her again when she was 14, but she wasn't close to our parents anymore. The biggest issue was when Rose ran back home after escaping kidnappers. She saw me in our mom's arms. That moment made her realize she had a new sister she didn't know about, who became their new precious one. She couldn't accept it. Rose disliked me as much as I disliked her. We both thought the other stole our deserved love and attention. But one day at school, watching videos of kidnapped kids living in poor conditions made me realize Rose had suffered. She was the one who deserved the most sympathy. I wanted to fix our relationship, but when I got home, I overheard her tell our mom, "Your precious one is Mia. Why pretend with me?" That was the last straw. Mom got furious, declaring she'd only support Rose financially since Rose didn't need her love. Any extra affection was for me. Just like that, I became Mom's only precious one again, with all her time for me. She'd go shopping with me, join school events, and attend tea parties at friends' houses. It seemed she devoted all her energy to me, but I knew it wasn't true. At night, she'd look at Rose's awards, softly stroking them with bittersweet eyes. She secretly kept track of Rose's studies, offering financial help under any pretext when needed. Money I couldn't even dream of at my age. With that, Rose pursued lessons, learned skills, and took competitions, becoming a true lady of the elite, proud, confident, hardworking, and humble. Mom's admiration for her was hidden but unmistakable. She ignored Rose, yet pinned new hair clips on me, praising, "Our Mia is one of a kind." Really? Was I truly one of a kind to Mom? I wasn't sure, just knew our relationship with Rose grew worse. To her, I had taken her parents' love. She always saw me as an enemy. Many times, I tried getting close, but she mocked me, so I withdrew. She said, "Mia, what can a spoiled brat, living under Mom and Dad's protection, achieve?" She said, "Do you know how you seem? A rich family's pampered waste, only caring about fun and nothing else." She held a trophy from a national math contest while everyone congratulated her, and I received only humiliation. But I couldn't argue. Rose was incredible, while I lived in my parents' shadow. Whenever I wanted to do something, Mom would say, "Why is Mia working so hard? Mia has us, no need to do anything." And there I stood, face flushed in shame. Nearby, Homer, who came with me, stepped forward, applauding Rose despite my discomfort. It was the first time he ignored how I felt, intently watching her, filled with admiration. A splash of cold water hit my face, pulling me from indulging in the past. I struggled to lift my head to see the person in front of me, but my vision was blurry. Starved for too long, Homer kept me locked in this basement for 3 months. Every couple of days, I'd get stale bread and cold water. Sometimes, if he was in a bad mood, he'd crush the bread under his polished shoes, making me crawl and lick the crumbs off the floor like a dog. After that, he would roughly grab my hair and sneer at me with disgust, saying, "Mia, you're the most spineless thing I've ever seen. Rose wasn't wrong with a single word when she insulted you." In the past 3 months, I've been starved down to practically just bones. I could barely hear his insults as the ringing in my ears drowned out everything. Even so, my heartache intensified whenever I caught a glimpse of Homer's disapproving eyes through my blurred vision. I couldn't help but remember how, once upon a time, I accidentally broke my uncle's expensive vase. I went to Homer with teary eyes, and he gently embraced me. He had said, "Mia, don't be afraid. I'll protect you. Nothing in this world will ever hurt you. And you should always be a happy little princess." Back then, Homer took the blame for me, endured a beating from our father, and still reminded me not to be afraid. Before Rose came back, he kept his promise to shield me from the storms. But Homer, do you even realize that you later became the biggest storm in my life? Yesterday I dreamt of Rose. Homer's voice echoed in my ear. I felt his cold fingers slide across my cheek. I opened my mouth to say something, but after 3 days without a drop of water, my throat was so dry I couldn't make a sound. I suspected my voice could never sing beautiful songs again. In that moment, I was thinking about the few fans I had. It was already pitiful enough to fangirl over a notorious figure, and now the main act couldn't even perform her best skill. I couldn't imagine how much ridicule they'd have to endure because of me. Mia and I both had ambitions in showbiz, but our family only had enough resources for one star. Someone would have to play second fiddle for the other to rise to the top. When my parents first told us this, they didn't say much. But deep down, I knew the one they were grooming wasn't me. I told Mom I preferred singing and dancing to the big screen. She praised my understanding while secretly heaving a sigh of relief. Sure enough, Rose claimed all the top-notch resources and won actress awards at a young age. I was left with half-hearted plans by our family, earning the label of a stage resource leech. Eventually, the internet started comparing me to Rose. They said I took shortcuts, stuck to songs and dances while Rose honed her craft and picked the best scripts. At that moment, it struck me. Everything done for Rose was meticulously planned, while you hardly had any opportunities. The family probably decided I was to be her stepping stone the moment she won her first major award. It was made clear when they said, "Mia doesn't need to work hard. Just come home and be our little princess." Not needing to chase a career implied that my dreams and passions didn't matter to them. Seeing my wandering gaze, Homer grew angrier. I could hear him click his tongue in annoyance before the sound of a belt being undone. Homer unfastened it and whipped me over and over. "Why did Rose die? Yet someone like you is still around." Homer's manic voice reached my ears. It seemed he really missed Rose. His voice trembled at the mention of her. But I couldn't spare any sympathy for him. The lashes left bloody marks on my skin. I was in such pain that I couldn't even cry out. I just fell onto the cold floor, my bones making a sharp crack as they hit. The next moment, the basement door opened. Homer dragged me by the wrist to the rooftop. After 3 months, it was the first time I saw sunlight. The pale sun hurt my weak eyes, bringing tears. Through blurry vision, I saw a familiar figure. It was Lillian, my childhood friend, who used to be my best buddy. She later became quite taken by Rose, turning into her sidekick. But even so, Lillian remained my best friend. She often tried to mend the gap between me and Rose. If anyone could save me, it would be Lillian. I tried to open my mouth to make a sound, but my throat was too dry from days without food or water. Homer noticed what I was trying to do, and pulled me even more roughly. "Do you have the nerve to ask for help? When Rose fell off the cliff, did you ever think how helpless she felt?" he said, pulling me so hard that I fell to the floor, hitting my head against the staircase. I felt a wound open up, and everything before my eyes turned red with blood. I thought I heard something hit the floor. "Homer, what's going on there?" Lillian's voice came from the living room 5 meters away. Homer just laughed coldly. "Just knocked over some worthless trash." "Oh, okay. I'll go help in the garden," Lillian replied, sounding relieved as she walked away. As her footsteps faded, despair settled deep within me. Homer was never going to let me go. He believed I killed Rose. So did my parents, which is why they let him take me away without protest. Now even Lillian passed me by, leaving me with no one to turn to. Homer dragged me to the rooftop, where he pressed my face against the railing. My head injury was bleeding profusely, pushing tears out of my eyes. "Scared already?" I heard Homer's voice from the side. Seeing me tormented always seemed to lift his spirits. He softened his tone a bit. but what he said still sent chills down my spine. He asked, "Mia, which do you think would hurt more, falling from a building or a cliff?" He had lost it. His grip on my hair tightened relentlessly. I struggled, catching sight of the hatred in his eyes. I suddenly remembered following him around as a kid. Back then, Homer was so gentle. He would carefully cup my injured hand and gently blow on it. He used to say, "Mia, why are you such a little clumsy one? Always getting hurt." He also said it's okay. Our Mia doesn't need to be smart. Just be happy and carefree, like a little princess. I couldn't reconcile the gentle brother from my memories with the violent person in front of me. Tears of sadness fell as I tried to defend myself. I didn't hurt Rose. Bang! Before I could finish, Homer suddenly yanked me up and slammed my head against the railing. "You still don't repent. You're always lying, always so vicious." Everything spun in a dizzy whirl. Homer's hate-twisted face came in and out of focus. I couldn't hold on any longer. My feet stumbled, and I almost fell over the railing. "Enough, Homer. She's still family." Dad's voice came from afar at just the right moment to stop Homer from throwing me to the ground. I looked down and realized the garden below was full of people, all staring up. They were family, friends, the people I once loved most. Now all of them looked at me with the same cold gaze. Lillian was among them. Our eyes locked for a moment before she turned away in disgust. That's when I realized she hated me too. Hated me because of Rose. But I didn't do it. Just the night before Rose's accident, they patted my shoulder and said, "Mia, you're always such a good and sensible kid." I can only cry after Rose and Homer exit happily. Sometimes I really envy Rose. She was so loved. My parents claimed indifference, but no one knew her better. Walking down the street, they'd suddenly remember which stage Rose was on, performing which piece. But they could never remember my dislike for pink dresses. I liked sky blue, warm orange, but whatever I told them, my next birthday gift was always a pink dress, the color Rose wore when she disappeared. My mom always remembered that. Even now, it was this faded pink dress that stirred their emotions when they looked at me. My parents took me from Homer's house, but not for my sake. Their concern for Homer, their soon-to-be son-in-law, was far more genuine than their concern for me. Even though Rose is gone, they told Homer, "You're still the son-in-law we recognize. Look forward, don't torment yourself, or you'll worry those who love you." As they said this, they remembered me, the root of all the tragedy. When they turned to me, all their warmth vanished. In the car ride home, nobody said a word to me. They brought me home and treated me like air, leaving me to fend for myself. Still, I felt a small glimmer of contentment. I touched my wrist, frail and twig-like, and thought I'd recover fully before meeting my fans again. Otherwise, they'd be heartbroken seeing me like this. But the day after I returned home, my studio released a statement. I was permanently quitting the music industry, due to my mistakes, spending the rest of my life repenting. It was hard not to connect this to Rose's fall 3 months ago. In normal families, losing one daughter often leads to cherishing the remaining one even more. But my studio, run by the company, had me end my career to atone with my life after Rose's accident. It's almost like they're accusing me by name of being the one who killed Rose. My announcement to leave the scene caused a huge uproar online. Everyone was hotly debating it. Rose's fans flooded my personal account, endlessly insulting and cursing me. Gradually, even those who weren't her fans jumped in. They didn't know me or Rose before. But in this age of being swept along, they desperately needed a vent. My messages and comment section were swamped with words like murderer and killer. A new wave of internet madness began. Everyone assumed the role of judge, attacking me with zeal. In this tidal wave, my fans' voices seemed so insignificant. If Mia did kill someone, wouldn't the police do something? The fact that she's still here means she's innocent, right? I saw this comment in the rapidly scrolling section. I couldn't help but smile a bit. Yeah, such a simple truth. Even a fan I've never met understands it. But my parents don't get it. My childhood friend doesn't get it. My best friend doesn't get it. They're convinced I'm the culprit, just because I once said I wished Rose had never come back. But that night I was really drunk. The words I didn't say were, "If only I had never been born. At least then, one of us could have had all the love." We envied the little love each got from our parents and friends, and looked at each other with resentment. But no one listened to my defense. My voice was drowned in waves of hatred. They each repented. My parents regretted ignoring Rose, Homer regretted being close to me, and Lillian regretted hoping in me, failing to protect her best friend. Faced with deep regret, words seemed powerless. Each has such heavy remorse and guilt, all placed on me to atone. The day I was kicked out, I stunned myself with calmness. Even when my mom hit and cursed me madly, I felt a sense of relief, like a burden had finally dropped. Finally, the last tie was severed. I couldn't stay in this house where I lived for 24 years, because seeing me would drive my mom to sudden madness and tears. Seeing me there reminded her of her missing, presumed dead, eldest daughter. Reminded her of that gaze seeking family love, and her own coldness and neglect towards her. Mia, you took the pampered life meant for Rose, and even her life. Why wasn't it you who died? My mom screamed, throwing my stuff piece by piece out the door. Her hysterical appearance lost all prior elegance. It was autumn by then. I bent down and found a sky blue album cover among the pink dresses. It was my first album. I had once given it as a gift to my beloved parents. After their love no longer belonged to me, it was the only thing in the house that truly belonged to me. I tucked the album in my coat pocket and turned into the chilly autumn wind, walking away. This time, I didn't even bring my phone. Anyway, no one wants to stay connected to the name Mia. With the last paper cash in my pocket, I checked into a hotel. As I filled the bathtub, I caught a rare glimpse of myself in the mirror. It had been forever since I faced myself, not since Homer locked me in the basement. I once had scraped my skin. I knew I had turned very ugly, no longer the pretty little princess they called me once. Now just a murderer to them, the most deserving of death. I moved my hand, tracing the pale, thin face in the mirror, and finally stopped at those hollow eyes that once cried and laughed, had love pains but always had light. Goodbye. As the water slowly filled the tub, I bid farewell to the girl in the mirror amidst the rising steam. Hope in your next life, you'll find love and loyalty. I put on my favorite sky blue dress and slipped slowly into the tub. The water covered my face with a warm touch, like a mother's embrace. My wrist fell limp outside the tub, and my fingers let go, dropping the blood-stained blade to the floor. Blood dripped from my fingertips, pooling into a warm crimson lake. The last sound before fading into oblivion was the news broadcast from the TV. An actress presumed dead from a cliff accident a year ago was spotted by tourists abroad, cradling her newborn and playing with her husband on the street. The cliff mystery now hints at an escape from marriage. The hotel phone rang sharply, call after relentless call, morphing into a bothersome trickle in my ears. Before the world went completely dark, I thought I heard the hotel door crash open, but I no longer had the strength to recognize the voice calling out. I'm tired. This time, I can truly rest. Before I turned 13, everything was joyful and smooth. I didn't know loss then, only that I had the best parents and a close friend. At 13, Rose came back. First, my parents' attention was stolen. They owed Rose and couldn't make it up, which made them focus even more on her. Kids do get jealous. If you can't comfort her, focus more on Mia in front of Rose. Eventually, she'll want our affection too. On a thunderous night, I grabbed my pillow and went outside my parents' room, only to overhear their conversation. That night, I sat alone in the hallway, hugging my knees for a very long time. For the first time, I realized that my parents' love for me had changed ever since Rose came back. No wonder. No matter how often I told Mom I wanted an orange dress, she kept bringing me pink ones. Turns out Mom stopped caring about me a long time ago. Later, Mom said she was worried Rose might be scared of the thunder, so she came out of the room to check on her. She walked down the hallway without noticing me hiding behind the stairs or my wide-open, empty room door. But the next morning at breakfast, she'd notice when Rose yawned and worry all day if she hadn't slept well. So this is how it's been all along. The love I thought I held onto so tightly had long ago been wrapped up and given away, just like a gift box with a beautiful ribbon, shiny but discarded after use. Back then, Homer was on my side. He lived next door, and refused to put on a friendly face for Rose from the moment she came back. Once, when Rose insulted me, calling me dumb as a pig and worthless while our parents were out, Homer stood in front of me. He sternly told her, "Your misfortune isn't caused by your sister. She's just as much a part of this family as you, entitled to your parents' love. You can seek compensation from many people, but your sister owes you nothing." He understood everything back then. But later on, I don't know when it started, but Homer began looking at me the same way Rose did. At first, he'd sound exasperated like, "Mia, why are you always so clueless? What should we do with you?" Eventually, that look of frustration became rare, replaced by the same indifference everyone else had. One day, I wore a new dress hoping to go with my parents to Rose's piano competition, but Homer stopped me at the door. "Mia, Rose doesn't want to see you. Don't hold her back." Mia, Rose. His words separated them from me, placing them in a world apart. That very moment, I watched the guy I'd secretly liked for 17 years turn away in my memories, never looking back at me again. I thought I'd get used to it. Used to being ignored, isolated, and opposed. Used to seeing those closest to me join someone else's side, while I remained where I was. But when Lillian, in defense of Rose, warily accused me of being jealous, my heart was still stabbed with a sharp pain. Well, I thought maybe it's for the best. This way, I can give up this world where nobody wants to love me without hesitation. Mia mia wakeup. So familiar, it's Mom's voice. She sounds very upset, as if she's crying. "Mia, Daddy misjudged you before. Daddy apologizes. Please wake up." Now it's Dad's voice. It's strange, I don't see his face, yet he sounds so much older. "Why are you so silly, hurting yourself?" This time it's Homer. I don't want to hear him, so I frown. Why is Mia's heartbeat getting weaker? "Doctor, where's the doctor?" The patient might have given up the will to live, due to some emotional shock. There's a moment of silence in the room. "Sorry." She seems unwilling to hear my voice. I'll step out. Footsteps slowly walk away, but my heartbeat weakens without stopping. Finally, Mom collapses onto me sobbing. "Sweetie, please wake up, even if it's just to scold me." "Lillian." Mia used to be closest to her. Let her talk to Mia. Maybe she'll want to wake up again. "Lillian, who?" I remember the last conversation we had was when she heard Rose had passed. She was about to go on a work trip to another state, but rushed back after seeing the news. She slapped me hard. "You couldn't even spare your own sister for a man. Being friends with you is the biggest regret of my life." That was the last thing she said to me. I doubt she ever wants to see me again. But Mom says, Lillian's been crying a lot at home. She's too upset to come, unsure of how to face Mia. How could she be just scared? She clearly hates me and doesn't want to see me. But Lillian eventually showed up. On a night with no Mom, Dad, or Homer around. She gently took my hand, like when we were kids. Tears wetted the back of my hand, and I heard Lillian sobbing. She said, "Mia, I'm sorry. It turns out I was the worst person." She continued, "Rose fooled us all. She never treated any of us as friends. We were just her pawns. How foolish I was to idolize her and mistreat my best friend." Lying calmly on the hospital bed, listening to Lillian, I felt nothing. Maybe, I thought Lillian remembered wrong. We weren't best friends anymore. She herself tore up our plan to go to college in the same city after we graduated high school. She went south with Rose and Homer. We ended things back then. She told me, "Mia, Rose is right. Even with our advantages, we can't just rely on our parents and lack ambition." "I'm sorry, Mia, but I don't want to be like you. We're on different paths now." But now, she's crying so much as she holds my hands, repeatedly apologizing. She started remembering the good times we had before Rose came into the picture. Back then, we would wear matching dresses and promise to be the closest of sisters forever. But that promise can't be kept now. Here I am, lying in a coma, while Lillian cries by my bedside. The next day when my parents visited, they were in shock. My mom sent Lillian home, and gently stroked my hair by the bedside. It's just like when I was sick as a child, and she stayed by me, comforting me with her soothing voice. She said, "Mia, my sweet girl, wake up soon. I bought you lots of pretty pink dresses. When you wake up, you can come back home to be our little princess." Is that true, Mom and Dad? Am I really your little princess? The daughter you always loved was the one who grew up among thorns, the one who could earn you glory. I remember Mom also saying behind my back, Mia isn't very smart. We can't leave the family business to her. Rose is the one with ideas. We should focus on nurturing Rose. Yet sitting here, she sounds like she loves me so much. That night, they found my diaries from years past, hoping reading them aloud could help wake me up. The first diary read, "Today is my birthday, and Mom gave me another pink dress. I told her last time that I wanted a warm orange dress, so that when people see me, they feel all warm inside. But why doesn't she hear me? The way she looks at me in a pink dress always seems like she's seeing someone else. Who could that be?" That was from my 13th birthday, the day before Rose was brought back home. After that, I never had a birthday just for myself again. When my mom gasped, flipping through the pages quickly, I knew she was searching for the entries about my birthdays. As she guessed each year, I stubbornly wished in my diary for dresses of different colors. The last birthday entry revealed my suspicion. I think the daughter wearing a pink dress Mom truly wants to see isn't me. I'm a substitute for her guilty conscience. But my foolish mom, if you never tell the one who loves pink, it'll stop her from wearing it, and the one who doesn't will never wear what she loves. I distinctly remembered writing at the end, but it's okay. As long as it makes Mom happy, I don't mind wearing something I don't like. I can pretend to be her perfect daughter, if it makes her happy. That was my last entry. Soon after, Homer proposed to Rose. The next day, Rose had her accident, and I was locked in a basement to atone for a year. After that year of confinement and torture, I developed severe psychological and physiological disorders and lost the ability to write. Realizing this, my mom frantically searched through my diaries for more entries, suddenly sobbing hard. She cried with such force, it was like she was pouring her heart out. Dad rushed in, holding her as she helplessly lamented. Mia knew. She understood everything. "She hates me, honey. She must hate me." She cried about how she couldn't even remember what I liked. Yet, I never complained and carried all my grievances alone just to keep them happy. From that day on, Mom became obsessed, reading and rereading every word in my diaries, searching for proof she deserved forgiveness. Perhaps not finding the answers she wanted in those words. She pulled out things she bought for me in the past, only to sadly realize they were all the kind of things Rose would like. Eventually, she broke down, desperately trying to find evidence she had genuinely loved me. But the more she remembered, the more she realized in despair that her love was always meant for Rose, who was now having a grand time abroad. And I had known this all along. I heard her repeatedly calling Rose overseas, with only a couple of calls getting through. From their reactions, Rose wasn't cordial at all. They had 2 daughters, but now both were lost. When Homer visited me again, my parents' attitude towards him had cooled significantly, even slightly hostile. They saw the scars he left on me, but chose to forget they once allowed him to do all that. I heard a thud, like Homer had dropped to his knees, his voice trembling and full of regret. "I went to see her," he said. "She confessed it was all a setup to make us unhappy, to eternally torment us. She never loved me, never cared." His voice was hoarse, sounding helpless, as the large hospital room remained silent, offering him no comfort. Once they all seemed like a perfect family, united against me, the wicked woman needing punishment. But now, they realized the one they loved harbored hatred, while the one they despised once foolishly loved them all. Homer finally couldn't take it anymore. He rushed to my bedside, grabbed my hand tightly, and let cold tears fall. He kept apologizing, saying it was all his fault, that he misjudged people, didn't trust Mia, and hurt Mia. Crying out my name, he pleaded, "Please wake up, Mia, can we start over?" As he spoke, I felt a ring slide onto my finger, its coldness giving me chills. Suddenly, I heard my mom's gasp, and Homer, who was kneeling by my window, was shoved aside. "Get out of here, Mia doesn't want to see you." My heartbeat was visibly slowing, and someone ripped the ring from my finger and threw it away. The room filled with chaos, Dad calling for the doctor, Mom yelling at Homer, and Homer's frantic apologies. The doctor arrived and silenced everyone. He said I had been severely shocked and had subconsciously given up on living. At this rate, I might never wake up again. At that moment, lying in darkness, I felt an unprecedented sense of thrill. I had listened to their cries long enough. Now I could show them my true feelings. I wanted them to know that just hearing their voices made me feel sick. I couldn't stand them, would rather die than be around them. I was once dressed by my parents in fancy clothes and silks, told to be the world's purest princess, then placed in a garden for everyone to admire. People praised my parents' selfless love, but no one cared how the doll on display felt. She just had to smile prettily and stay innocent. But now, I couldn't even do that. The window hiding my malice swung open, screaming to the world, "I hate you, I despise everyone, even those I once loved, like my parents and that boy. They wanted a pure-hearted princess, but fed her fake affection. How could they demand forgiveness?" My parents were sobbing as they left, while the doctor tried everything to save me. But I was so tired. I didn't want to stay and listen to the hypocritical apologies of those who hurt me. Until one day, I heard that voice again. That familiar tone, once a nightmare in my world. "If you hate them, why not get revenge? Stomp those who hurt you. An eye for an eye. It's better than lying here. I said it before, you really are a loser." Rose's voice echoed clearly in my mind, still full of malice. She asked, "Do you know why I win?" After seeing people's true nature, I never got attached. No matter how they treat me, they're just tools for my goals. But you, Mia, only a loser would be soft-hearted and keep hoping for love from those who harm them. You seek love from those who don't know how to love, like you can't live without it. And that's why you always lose. Your head is full of flowers and useless thoughts. Her words were blunt and piercing. Even now they unsettled me. Anger surged through me again and again, and my fingers twitched slightly. Rose's voice in the room went quiet for a couple of seconds. Then came more mocking laughter. "Mia, did you know out of everyone, I hate you the most? How could someone as stupid and useless be my sister? We're nothing alike. Are we really related by blood? Angry? So what? You can only lie here. Believe it or not. When you die, they will quickly get over their guilt, forgive each other, and comfort one another. Your death will only make their bond stronger," she said, "whether you admit it or not. Mia, these people you loved so deeply are inherently so vile." The seething anger cooled. My numb limbs began to feel cold. I knew Rose was right. My parents were weeping out of guilt, but it was mixed with the bitterness of Rose's betrayal. Still, no grievance can't be calmed eventually, and their lives would continue to be happy. Not a trace of me would be left behind. After a long silence, Rose leaned close and whispered one last thing. "Not satisfied? Then get up and get revenge, Mia. Don't spare anyone, not even me." Rose's presence faded away. My lashes trembled in the dark. The next day, my parents arrived at the hospital as usual, only to find me sitting up, discussing recovery with the doctor. My mom looked like she had so much to say, but met my cold gaze and fell silent. "Mia, it's Mom. Why are you looking at me like that? Don't you recognize me? It's Mom," she almost pleaded, grabbing my wrist, but I calmly pulled away. "Ma'am, please calm down," the doctor cut in, explaining to my mom that the pain before my attempted suicide had triggered my body's self-protection mechanism. My brain shut down my ability to feel emotions to prevent me from having suicidal thoughts again. So when I wake up, I ignore everyone else's feelings. When my mom heard this, she looked at me, almost unable to accept it. She couldn't believe her once loving daughter now sees her as a stranger. Crying, she kept calling my name, saying I was her only good child. Hearing this, I couldn't help but look up calmly and question her. "What about Rose?" Mom's crying suddenly stopped. "Mia, what does that mean?" she cautiously asked me. So I patiently repeated myself, "The only person you care about is Rose. If I'm your only one, then what is Rose?" Words like this would never have come out of my mouth before. Mom couldn't take it anymore and fainted. But what's this compared to what's to come? When Dad held her and angrily approached to scold me, I calmly lifted my scarred face and smirked. "What, Dad? Sending your daughter away to be punished again?" He froze, the words stuck in his throat. For the first time, it seemed like he truly looked at my face, destroyed by scars. The harshness in his eyes faded, replaced by growing weariness and confusion. When I finished the discharge paperwork, They naturally expected me to get in the car and go home with them. I laughed and said, "Dad, Mom, when you kicked me out last time, you said I was no longer family. Did you forget?" They were stunned by my words. Mom looked hurt and stepped forward trying to take my hand, but I turned away. "Can't you give Mom and Dad another chance? We know we were wrong now. You used to love me so much. I'm your mom, we share blood." She started crying again, but stopped when she saw my cold gaze. I touched my cheek and let out a wry laugh. "We are not mother and daughter. We are nothing alike." I used to be proud I inherited my mom's looks, but now my face is covered in scars. There's nothing left to prove there was ever love between us. After leaving the hospital, I moved into the house Rose arranged for me, but that doesn't mean I've forgiven her. Like she said, I'll get revenge on each of them. I heard Rose went home during this time. Faced with our parents' accusations, she smashed everything she could until they didn't dare to say another word to her. "I'm not like that idiot, Mia. Don't think you can use me as a punching bag," she yelled before leaving Mom crying behind. She kept saying she made a mistake, that Mia was the child who loved her most. She regretted pushing away the one who cared the most. But so what? The fact is, she has 2 daughters, and both were thrown away by her. One she loved and one who loved her. On the 3rd day after settling into the place Rose arranged, I met Homer. He stood across the street among the crowds, silently watching me. He looked more worn out and thinner. Lillian told me Homer wants to make amends, thinking it would redeem him. "Mia, I won't plead for him. You have the right to punish all of us," Lillian said softly over the phone, her tone cautious. "Can we still be friends?" I couldn't help but laugh. Didn't expect she'd be as delusional as Homer. Lillian, hearing me call her name made her noticeably happier on the other end. I asked. When I almost escaped from Homer's basement, I heard footsteps outside. I wanted to call for help, but that person locked the door from outside. "That was you, right?" The breathing on the other end suddenly stopped. I continued on my own. That time, if I had escaped, I could have called the police and protected myself. Then, I wouldn't have been chained up when Homer caught me again. Later he beat me, and I couldn't dodge, getting cut in the face by the broken porcelain, leaving scars. "You saw the scars while I was asleep, didn't you?" "Mia, She tried to speak, but I cut her off. "I often wonder what made you turn on me. When we were kids, I shared all my clothes, friends, and family with you. What I had, you always had too. You always had a special place in my world. Yet, you pushed me away, saying I couldn't keep up with you and Rose." "Lillian," I called softly like we were kids again. "Did you ever think? Maybe if it weren't for you, I could have gone further. Sure, I'm not as smart or talented as Rose, but I have my own passions. She plays the piano, I love dancing. She's a math whiz, I'm good at art." But Lillian said she didn't want me to be far from her, or to abandon her for other friends. So during our junior year, I gave up the art training I was signed up for to stay and prepare for college with her. Later, I went north on my own while she stayed with Rose and Homer down south. Their bond was so strong that even knowing what closing that door meant for me, she still did it. "So if it were you, would you forgive?" I asked her. Her answer was ceaseless sobbing. "Homer's appearances have become more frequent. He's gotten bolder after his initial hesitation. I always catch sight of him across the street when I'm watering flowers on my balcony or heading out. I ignore it, but Homer starts to light up. One day, while I was out for a walk, a neighbor's dog, off its leash, charged right at me. In that moment, my mind flashed back to the basement with the starving hunting dog Homer brought in. He'd taunt me from above, tilting my chin with his shoe, watching my fear as I was surrounded by the dogs. I'd been afraid of dogs since I was a kid, and that fear hit its peak right then. I couldn't help but shiver all over, too scared to even cry out. The same thing happened now. I stood there frozen until Homer came over and chased the dog away, then turned around and hugged me. I was shaking uncontrollably in his arms, just like when I was little. He gently patted my back, comforting me with his soft tone. "Mia, don't be scared. Big brother Homer's here." Until he heard my trembling plea. "I'm sorry. I won't be jealous of Rose anymore, please stop." The light in Homer's eyes faded away. In the end, he moved into my home. Just like Lillian said, he genuinely wanted to make amends. He hovered around me, eager to please, even though my moods were unpredictable. I'd wake from a nap, storm into his room, and slap his handsome face, choking him. I'd lose it after a simple chat and curse him with venomous words. Within weeks, he'd accumulated scars from my cigarette burns. Yet he always endured with a look of deep affection. After I hit him, he'd even come and gently rub my hands, asking if they hurt. I'd laugh, then yank his hair, and slam his head into the coffee table. "Nowhere near enough, Homer," I'd say with a smile. "Compared to the pain you caused me, this is nothing." As time went on, his body gathered more wounds. Even high-collared sweaters couldn't hide them anymore when I injured his eye with an ashtray. Homie's mom saw it and came crying to me overnight. She didn't ask for forgiveness for Homer, only that I let him go. As she spoke, my eyes landed on Homer standing at the door behind her. I smiled slightly. "All right, just tell Homer not to show up in front of me anymore." But he did. The next day, he stood there as if nothing happened, greeting me from below my home. I had changed the locks. He couldn't get in, so he just waited outside, getting windswept and rained on, stubbornly staying in his self-imposed penance like a dog. I let him in after 3 days when he'd passed out from low blood sugar at my door. I called the security guard downstairs to drag him inside, then filled a bucket with cold water and dumped it on his head. Homer woke up without a hint of anger, looked at me, and smiled with a stubborn glint in his eyes. He said, "Mia, my mom agreed we can be together." His mental state had started to waver lately, often lost in his own world. I didn't confront him, just crouched down in front of him, speaking word by word. "What about Rose?" The mention of Rose froze Homer, whose eyes were full of dreams. He went quiet, hands on his head, seemingly in intense pain. "Rose," he muttered, as if the shame of betrayal filled his heart again. After a while, he lifted his red eyes to me and said, "I never liked Rose. I was just intrigued by someone I'd never met in our circle. I mistook that for love and hurt the one I really loved." "Really?" I looked at him from above, just as he once did to me. I said, "I'll give you a chance. If you make me happy, I'll let you go public about us." My parents were under a lot of pressure lately. Our family and Homer's used to be the closest partners. But since Homer took over, he started applying pressure. That day, Dad couldn't resist anymore. He wanted to meet with Homer to talk. When he got there, all he saw was me in the chair, scars marking my face. He slumped like the life had been sucked out of him. Even his usually straight back was hunched. "Mia, did you do all this?" he murmured, baffled. "But why? The family's your legacy too." "Not yet," I said, resting my chin on my hand, amused by my once imposing father's downfall. My words struck a chord, and suddenly his anger erupted. "You're so eager? I'm not dead yet. It will all be yours." "But I don't believe you," I whispered, and he froze. "You never kept any promises you made me. You said I was your most precious in the world, but never told me about the Rose before me. You said I'd be the happiest princess, always backed by you." I rolled up my sleeves to show the scars on my arms, lashes, cuts, burns. The same marks were all over my neck, shoulders, and face. My dad's eyes were wide with shock. Next to me, Homer's pupils contracted, and he staggered back, collapsing to the floor after bumping into a chair. He's been super out of it lately. I slipped something into his daily meals, but I still need him to deal with that old man. So I didn't go too hard on him. He's just so guilty. Just looking at my scars makes him crumble. Even you all think these scars are gnarly and terrifying. But Dad, you were the one who allowed Homer to take me from home, because the eldest daughter died. So the youngest had to pay the price. My life seemed worthless to you. I said this while wearing a cold expression, then stood up and walked over to him. I used to believe in your promises that you loved me most, but you didn't follow through. Given that, your belated love isn't needed anymore. You need to offer me some tangible compensation. My father was silent for a long time. In the end, he opened his mouth but couldn't say anything. After signing that share transfer agreement, he asked me, "Mia, spare your mom. She really loved you in the past. She just didn't think it through then." "I'll think about it." I smiled readily. A week after I got my parents' shares, I sold them at a high price. I have no talent for running a company, and I don't trust anyone around me. I thought at least my parents would call to scold me, but nothing. They seemed to naturally accept their retirement. Mom even happily told me, "Now I don't have to help your dad schmooze and network. I can spend more time making it up to you and loving you." Mom, save those tactics to win back your eldest daughter. I don't need it. My cold voice echoed. The voice on the other end fell silent for a long time. Then slowly the sound of sobbing began. "Mia, Mom really only wants to love you. Mom knows she was wrong. Give Mom." Before she finished, I hung up. Still, she wasn't discouraged and kept trying to mend things with me. Soup she made, clothes she designed, would show up at my door every few days. And each time I'd smile. "Is this something Rose liked?" Mom's face would go pale, her eyes filled with sorrow. "Mia, Mom's not seeing you as Rose anymore. You're my only daughter now." "I'm your only daughter, but you don't even know what soup I like?" I said, throwing the beautiful thermos and bag into the trash, watching her walk away sadly. The truth is, I lied. Today's soup was my favorite flavor. It's not the soup I hate, just my parents. Mom might have understood this, or maybe she didn't. She grew more obsessed with claiming me as her daughter, hoping late motherly love would move me. Then on a stormy night, she called, wanting to lull me to sleep like when I was little. I softly told her, "I'll give you a chance." Mom willingly walked into that little dark room. There was food, drink, even a big soft bed. The only things missing were sound and light. Inside, she'd be surrounded by endless darkness. I told Mom she could stay in there for 10 days, experience the pain I went through. Then I'd forgive her. She went without hesitation. On the 10th day, when Dad let her out, he saw a woman broken down in tears. No hope, no light, no future, just endless darkness. Just 10 days and you couldn't handle it? But I had to endure another's torment day and night. I curled my lips into a sarcastic smile. Not expecting the next moment, Mom rushed over and wrapped me in a tight embrace. Without a word, she held me fiercely to her. My daughter. My daughter. She held on so tightly, far from her usual elegant demeanor. It felt like she wanted to mold me back into her own flesh and blood. I was forced against her chest, hearing the deep, vibrating hum within. Her cries continued. "Mom knows she was wrong, really wrong this time. I'm sorry for putting you through such suffering. I'm not a good mom." Her cries were so intense, like she was purging all the sorrow in her heart. Tears streamed from her cheeks, soaking into my hair. Suddenly, it all felt meaningless. So I kept my promise and forgave Mom. "I forgive you, but I won't love you again. We're even now, and there should be no more entanglements." I said, "Turn to leave." Mom cried out, devastated, but this time, she didn't reach out to stop me. Yet she'll live the rest of her days in regret. After selling the shares, I had nothing to worry about. I looked at Homer standing eagerly before me. He doesn't hold any value anymore. "Mia, give me another chance. Let me take care of you for the rest of my life," he said, kneeling, eyes full of affection. Around us were so-called mutual friends he brought for support. Mutual friends? I wasn't really close with them even back in school. They were with Lillian, Homer, and Rose in their clique. Thinking about this, I ignored Homer's kneeling proposal and scanned around, spotting that familiar figure in the crowd. Lillian, in a pink dress, was nervously watching from afar. In the next moment, I slipped my finger into Homer's ring. Cheers erupted all around us. Homer's mom never trusted me. When Rose was around, she'd often praise me, blatantly showing her preference to demean Rose, even jokingly inviting me to be her daughter-in-law. This made me, who had done nothing, seem like the villain breaking Homer and Rose apart in his eyes. Now my face and reputation were ruined by Homer last year. Homer's mom doesn't want her daughter-in-law to be someone like Rose, who's high and mighty. Nor does she want someone like me, with a ruined reputation and face. She tried countless times to remind Homer that my reasons for agreeing to marry him weren't exactly pure. After all, I never hid my hatred for Homer from her. But Homer was obsessed. When he was all excited about a future with Rose, she was already planning to go abroad with her childhood sweetheart. His deep feelings for Rose became a joke, and he kept trying to make up for it with me. In his memories, I used to be the one who loved him the most in the world. That's how I understand Homer. Otherwise, I can't explain why he would act so deeply remorseful after causing so much harm. Was he out of his mind? I almost forgot. Homer wasn't crazy before, but maybe now he truly is. Thinking about the things I've been secretly adding to his food, and seeing how he's been losing control more easily, I just smiled a little. Finally, when Homer's mom picked a public scene to cause trouble for me again, I pretended to have a trauma episode. I was trying to mess with Homer's mind, watching his eyes grow red, and his behavior become more unhinged, until he pushed his beloved mother down the stairs in front of so many media cameras. Homer's mom hit her head, and was rushed to the emergency room. When Homer's dad arrived, he slapped Homer across the head. He demanded that Homer break up with me right away. But Homer refused. After we got home, he kept asking me obsessively, "Mia, do you still love me? You're not gonna leave me, right? I'm gonna take care of you forever this time," he said. He hugged me tightly. I looked up at the chandelier. "No, Homer, I don't love you. I am gonna leave you. I'll never forgive an abuser. I hope you rot in hell." Because of what happened to Homer's mom, his entire family was more opposed to our marriage than ever. Homer's dad even came to see me, asking me to leave Homer. I agreed, but Homer seemed possessed. When he couldn't find me at home, he lost his mind. He nearly tore the entire city apart looking for me, but with the control his dad's power held over me, there's no way he'd ever find me. Finally, after confirming I really did abandon him, Homer cut his wrists. Homer's dad gave in. He told me that even in a coma, Homer kept calling out my name. Before I left, Homer's dad pleaded with me, saying Homer was a kind kid who cared deeply for others. He just got duped. I said nothing. Does Homer really care for others? I thought back to how he used to take care of me as a kid, and later how he always defended Rose. Sure, he might be sentimental, but that doesn't change the fact that he's an abuser. He'll never deserve forgiveness. Our wedding took place on a gloomy and rainy day. Even though the Grand Hotel had a sunlit roof, keeping all the gloom outside, the guests all decked out with smiles. It couldn't fight off the storm. When the first thunderclap hit, the officiant asked if I would love and cherish him through rich and poor, good and bad, health and sickness, until death do us part. I suddenly couldn't help but smile. Homer stood across from me, sensing something. Those warm eyes of his, looking at me with a desperate plea. I just kept smiling at him, the whole ceremony at a standstill. Tears began to well up in Homer's eyes, turning red. He trembled and called out softly, "Mia." The guests exchanged baffled looks at the unexpected turn of events. Suddenly, the large screen behind me flickered, and the next moment, there appeared Homer, face flushed from drunkenness, like a deserted puppy, kneeling at my knees, murmuring in pain and despair. At first, he called Rose's name over and over, and I reminded him that Rose was carrying someone else's child. Homer looked up in a daze, and when his eyes landed on my scar-covered face, his eyes suddenly turned red. "Mia, Mia," he stuttered, touching the scars on my face. "I'm so sorry." I turned my face to the camera, showing all the scars on my face and body. The video me asked Homer, "What are you sorry for?" As if he wanted to forget everything, Homer held his head, crying in pain. "I'm such a monster," he said. "I shouldn't have locked you up, or hit you, or scared you with the dogs. You always loved looking pretty since you were little." The rest of the video was just him rolling on the ground, hitting his head, cursing himself. "Homer, you are such a beast." By now it was pretty clear. The guests started to murmur among themselves, pointing and commenting about Homer's family. Homer's dad and mom's faces turned grim, especially Homer's dad. He couldn't believe I'd go this far. He was just about to scold me on stage when my uninvited mom rushed forward and clawed at his face. "You'll all burn in hell. You'll all burn in hell," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "Me too. Neither of us deserves Mia's forgiveness." Homer, standing in front of me, had gone pale and looked like he might collapse any second. The officiant was at a loss too. It was his first time dealing with something like this. Just as he was about to say something to save the situation, I took the mic from him. I looked at Homer and quietly said, "I don't want to. Homer, I don't want to be your bride. I'm not crazy enough to fall in love with the monster who hurt me. There was a time I really liked you. So much that even when you loved my sister Rose, I stepped aside, quietly wished you well because to me, you were the best guy in the world, and I didn't want to trouble you. But then I changed my tone. From the moment you scolded me for Rose without asking questions, doubted me, and even punished me for her before knowing the truth, I stopped loving you. I just hated you like trash, like a venomous snake. I wish I could tear you apart. Mia. Homer stared at me, emptiness and pain in his voice. At that moment, seeing his regret and sorrow, I felt a rush of satisfaction. Do you even deserve to use the word love, Homer? I asked him. In the end, he couldn't hold himself up and started to fall back. The officiant reached out to catch him, but then something unexpected happened. A small figure in a pink dress rushed the stage. In front of everyone, she stabbed Homer right in the heart. How dare you humiliate me? What did I do wrong? Lillian cried, tears streaming down her face. Just die already. The crowd gasped in horror. Soon security dealt with Lillian. They held her next to the fallen Homer. Both their faces were stained red. Homer's eyes stayed locked on mine, never leaving. Mia, I heard his weak voice. I'm sorry. I had no patience left to listen to his apologies, so I turned and walked away. I'd heard sorry more times than I could count since I woke up. It was exhausting. Homer didn't make it. Lillian stabbed him 4 times, each hit a vital spot. Homer's family crumbled because of it. In the police interrogation room, Lillian firmly claimed I made her do it. But she couldn't prove it. So other than Lillian and me, no one knew how awkward she was when I revealed. You like Homer too, right? First it was me, then Rose. Homer's gaze never landed on Lillian. But she still liked him, and became friends with Rose, and me just to be near him. She even talked me out of pursuing art, afraid she wouldn't have a reason to meet Homer if I left for training. The friendship I treasured so much was just her strategy to get close to a guy. How pathetic. When I told her Homer thought her crush was disgusting, she went mad. All those secret feelings she had were stomped on. Before I left, I warned her that Homer and I would be married soon. And he didn't want me seeing someone with feelings for her friend's fiancé. Who knows what I said that set Lillian off, but her actions went beyond what I expected. In the end, she got a life sentence for murder. When I visited her in prison, she was filled with regret for killing Homer in a moment of madness. I had to tell her that Homer never knew about her feelings, that her name wouldn't be remembered, and her friendship only mattered to the old me. Rose and Homer never even thought of her. Homer's disgusting comment? Just a fake recording I made. Lillian was shocked, then flew at me with every insult she could muster. I watched coldly as the guards pulled her away, but I asked one last question. When Rose was bullied at school, was that you claiming to be me? Lillian froze, guilt flashing across her face. Even someone like her could feel guilty? Back then, under the guise of friendship, she framed me so boldly. That's why Rose and I fell out so quickly. That's why Homer said I had become malicious. That's how Lillian joined their new circle as a helper. What's sad is no one, not my family, not those I loved, ever asked me for my side. They didn't even bother to doubt my fall from grace, just because I loved Homer, and he moved on. No one truly tried to know me, but thankfully, I don't need them anymore. Stepping out of the prison, my phone buzzed with a familiar number. Got what you wanted. Rose's voice was different now, warmer, with a laugh in her tone. Clearly she's happier these days. Not quite, I said softly. There's one more person I can't let go. You told me to get back at everyone who wronged me. So now, Rose, I'm coming for you.